Director of Ceremonies, I am going to stand by the protocol that has already been established, and I'm also going to stand by the protocol of removing the mask when you are standing in front of the podium. Firstly, before I start with my presentation, I'm going to acknowledge the team that has done all the background material scratching amongst the manual processes and the digital processes. My colleagues at the bank, Dr. Bernie Daruka, Ms. Charlotte Cheripo, and Mr. Henok Shilongo that has assisted me in getting all this information together. I thank you, colleagues. Today, my task is very easy. I believe we are looking forward to learn from the experts from the international front and also Professor Balia, which I was very privileged, and those that might have followed us online, but also physically, I hope that we have picked up a number of issues that will probably also come during the panel discussion on digital transformation. So the outline of my presentation is basically covering a small introduction, digital infrastructure, public and private digital platforms and services, digital skills, digital financial services, regulatory and policy environment, and then I'll conclude and provide some policy recommendations accordingly. Now, this is really empowered and has been according to, in an informal way in terms of our own assessment, according to the World Bank country diagnostics in terms of digital economies in Africa. So that has assisted us to really look at these methods and assess Namibia's position right now, where it is in terms of digital transformation. Now, when I'm looking at this, I'm going to talk on the infrastructure development. Where does Namibia stand in terms of telecommunications? Where do we stand in terms of electricity and broadband services? So in terms of broadband services, I'll also try and share with you some statistics related to that. Then we come to the digital platforms, which is in actual fact also just talking on the modernizing service delivery mechanisms, health, e-health services, e-education. Where are we with e-trade? Where are we with online and mobile shopping platforms? I will then touch on the digital financial services, payments, banking, credit, remittances, savings, investments, and insurance, and then on regulatory and policy environment. As being regulators, it is also critical then to look at the enabling environment in terms of regulation, because it's regulation vis-a-vis tech. How do you balance that? And I hope that after the symposium, we are going to get some of these answers from the panel discussion. And then to the center of it is digital skills. How are we going to transform ourselves in terms of skills as some of our jobs might become redundant? How do we then transform ourselves to take part of this digital journey? So then in terms of the digital infrastructure, on telecommunications and broadband services, if I can just start with the ADSL to see how many megabits per second are we able to then have distributed in Namibia. So starting with 2015, those that had access to, I will start with the one below, which is less than 2 megabits per second, which was at that point in time 39,660 and has reduced over time. But what does it mean? For us, it's a good thing because it was then substituted by that above between 2 and 10, which means much more faster internet access. So that has increased from 6,307 in 2015 to 63,696. And that showed us more and more people had access. which is what we want to see over time, increasingly, substantially increasing over time, which is still around 2,494. Particularly now that we are in an age where almost everything has to be done via video conferencing and high definition video conferencing that we have to do. That is why it is important. Then we look at the fiber to home. If somebody asked me 5 years ago, are you going to put in fiber? I would ask, no, why? It's expensive and so on. But WEX have made it possible, and I'm going to talk to that as well. But now we have got fiber to home. It was firstly 11. Now it's around 2,832. Fiber gives more stability. Those that have got fiber access compared to our traditional internet or lines will see that the stability has improved if you compare to what you had. And then other wireless we then see accordingly. Then we have the regional access. Now, in terms of population coverage, one of our, as a country, we indicated that by 2024, we are going to have 95% of Namibians access to internet. And if we look at, we have now extracted 3 regions, and you are probably asking why those 3. Those 3, we are saying that if you look at 4G, which is what you need for all this modern day, if you want to transform yourself digitally as a country, you need to at least have had 4G access. 5G, we know the story, probably also have been much more in the newspapers. But with 2G, we were at 96 as a country, but in those regions, we were still lower. But Kabango West, we were 94. And we have to thank MTC partly also for that access in terms of 2G, as the 081 access have really widened the scope in terms of broadening the coverage of the population. And I believe it was around 89% by June of this year, if you look at the total population, that's on 2G. But on 3G and 4G, we still have a long way to go. If we want access to the children at the rural schools, if we want them to be at the same par as the kids at the schools in Windhoek, we still have a long way to go in terms of improving that access of broadband services. Now, just about what I was saying on the WEX cable, the famous WEX cable that have enabled us in terms of fiber optic access, that came in 2011, and that has increased our access and internet stability capabilities and then connection to the rest of the world. The next one is the Iguano cable, which is 14,000 kilometers long, and it goes from Portugal to South Africa. Namibia is one of those access points, one of the 9 points that it's going to have access to. So we are lucky that we are going to add again stability towards the internet and broadband services. So those are opportunities that we need to leverage on as a country. But then there are also weaknesses that I want to highlight. One is that we lack modern ICT infrastructure. So we still have to do quite a bit of investment in that, in the ICT infrastructure. We also have limited internet access, as I have indicated, particularly because we are sitting with 824,000 square kilometers of land, and our population being 2.6 million, it is spread all over. So that gives us a challenge in terms of cost of how to distribute that. But with the digital transformation and the capabilities, we should be able to then increase this accessibility much more faster. And then the other hiccup is insufficient electricity. So we are seeing that a number of schools, for example, had this problem when we had to immediately switch to online. And that I will talk to when I get to the comparisons of the higher education institutions. So if I come to the public digital services, what is the state currently now for Namibia in terms of public digital services? One is the e-government listing manual, old system of bid solicitation, evaluation, and contract management. And the Minister of Finance is here. It is one of key initiatives that is going to really streamline the processes of procurement and also being able for the ministry to assess whether some of these companies might be briefcase companies or what can happen there. And that will enable them and also efficiently improve their process. Now, in order to enable this to kickstart, the ministry is in the process of amending the Procurement Act and training the needed staff, obviously the reskilling and upskilling of those that were already involved in that process. Then we have got the electronic document and records management system. Here we again want to get rid of modernization of paper-based and electronic records management practices, and this is in compliance with the Ncrst Act. Unfortunately, the ministry indicated, and this is under the Prime Minister's office, there are some hiccups in terms of the rolling out of that system, as very few of the staff are actually in place to be able to roll out that system. Then we have the integrated healthcare information management system, which is called the eHealth. Some of us, when you get to the hospitals, you have to fill out a long form, and you just wish that from moving from one hospital, if you are in an accident, you get there, your information is already there. You have got a unique number, and that will really be enabled by this system on eHealth. The ministry is currently now busy with the tendering process. So that is going to reduce the workload of nurses and even some of the administrative staff so that they can focus on other things rather than watching whether you are filling out the information correctly. Then we have civil registration and identification. All of these events is necessary to register births, deaths, and marriages and all the civil registration issues. Now, the e-death was launched and is used at the Central and Territorial hospitals and at the main mortuaries, but it has not yet been rolled out countrywide, so it's only available there. And we are hoping that the ministry is going to speed up on that. Ncrst tax system. Ncrst is an online system that provides taxpayers access to their tax accounts to execute various self-services, new registration. We all know now you are able to upload your own tax certificate, so that makes it much more efficient so that the ministry can focus on auditing whether this information has been correctly indicated, and then as it gets to be linked with information from other government services. This is already a fully functional system. Then we have the Asukura system. This is also fully functional. This helps with foreign trade procedures and foreign trade payments. So that is again another electronic system that we are able to roll out as a country. And then the one is the Integrated Employment Information System, NIEIS. And this is initiated by the Ministry of Labour. Those that are seeking for jobs, you are able to register and indicate what type of job are you being specializing into and what type of job you are looking. And then you get to be paired with institutions that are looking for that particular job. There, we probably still have to improve on the efficiency of the follow-ups and the filtering through to the different institutions, because at times it may cause delays in the speed at which some of the institutions might want to fill the vacancies. And then the other one is the one that we have been always talking about, even on our platforms at a symposium, is the one-stop shop called Numbers One Portal, where it is a joint initiative of the Ministry of Industrialization and Trade, Ministry of Finance, City of Windhoek, and the Social Security Commission, where we want all the information of clients and companies to be at this one-stop shop so that investors locally and internationally can access that information. The indication now, Honorable Minister, is that it's 90% completed due to budgetary constraints. Then I want to just touch on the e-education digital skills. When COVID happened, it was a whole disruption to the education system. Some of the schools were quickly able to divert, some of them were not able to divert. If we take the two national universities, which is the Namibia University of Science and Technology, they were able to form a strategic partner. One of the key projects that they have indicated to us is the strategic partnership with MTC through the High-Tech Transfer Plaza Select. And that I was privileged because I was wearing my other hat of being the council chairperson of NCrst, together with Dr. Liki Erastus from MTC and the Vice Chancellor, that we were able to launch that. And that is really bringing entrepreneurs and academics and the IT specialists and companies that want to come and test out their innovation capabilities and building some of these systems. They are able to bring everybody together into one place so that you can just, if you need some support or you want a certain innovative product that you want these teams to help you develop, you are able to do that. So that is one of the things that was launched this year. They have hybrid program offerings and they predominantly online, some of them of course face-to-face, and then a tech hub project-based service e-learning through augmented reality and virtual reality. They now have also introduced a Master of Data Science degree that is going to start in 2022, cybersecurity courses for undergraduate and postgraduate, professional programs, ethical hacking and information security, Python programming for machine learning, big data technologies, the Indian Namibia Center of Excellence in Information Technology. So those are the projects that Ncrst has indicated that they have embarked upon during this period of time. And last night at the seminar, the public lecture, Professor was dealing with a number of some of these programmings, including Python at the seminar. Then the University of Namibia also able to have then offerings online with limited face-to-face. They increased the existence of the provision of existing data, gave data devices to all the students and staff. They upgraded IT infrastructure to hyper-convergence infrastructure to improve the online offerings. They offer a wide variety of technology and ICT opportunities. They also have got a master's in cybersecurity, Virtual Institute for Scientific Computing and Artificial Intelligence. They concluded with an MOU with the Africa Blockchain Institute to introduce an MSc in blockchain technology. So in terms of higher education, I believe we are more or less on track. We have also seen the information from NSFAF that they have given about 10,500 laptops to students as well. So that has improved online learning. The problem we have is with basic education, and that's where we need to pull up all our socks, as that is the part which suffered quite a bit in 2020 when COVID hit, because some of the schools did not have access to education for 3 months or so, because it was done sometimes through WhatsApps, and many people also did not, or many of the school children did not have that access. So that is where we really need to improve upon. Now, just touching on private digital platforms and services, we have before commercial banks, and then two of the payment providers have given about 442 licenses to some of the merchants, and they are able to then get, for you to be able to buy from some of these merchants, you can pay directly without getting physically into the office or into the company, and then without actually using your cards. So if we look at the card payments just on e-commerce alone, is that we had, in terms of value, we had more than about 6.8 million Namibian dollars, and then in terms of volume, we had around 22,000 transactions in terms of that e-commerce card payments. Now then, on the digital platforms, we had private and public, and those are all the names. Pay there. them have got integrated systems where you don't need your card, but some of them still require you to actually do, although you pull out the information, you still have to do EFT. So that is where the difference is, where we have the integrated payment systems. Now, what are the strengths and weaknesses in these digital platform services? One is on the strengths, it creates an enabling environment for us to be able to transact. The other one is that the information sharing, because sharing of these platforms are enabling us to get access to that information. However, we have got weaknesses, is that human resources are not trained, so there are lack of trained human resources. We have lack of standardization and interoperability and lack of infrastructure. So those are the weaknesses that we have. So in terms of digital financial services, I'll just briefly touch on the innovative products. On the banking sector side, we have the chip and pin. On banking payment cards, so we can just, tap some of tap and play functional or tap and pay functionality, which a year ago we did not probably 3 years ago. Some of us in the country did not think that you can just go to a machine and tap, but this made it easier with COVID, where there's no physical contact. Those are some of these innovations that the banks have come up with. We have cardless withdrawals at ATM, deposits at ATM, cashback services at merchants, cash withdrawals at retail outlets, and so on. Then we have also on the payment systems, the RTGS, the Ncrst, the fintech services mainly in the payment systems. And then on the non-bank financial institution side, some of these innovations were done through cloud computing, artificial intelligence, robotics technology, distributed ledger technology, biometric technology, and the Internet of Things. Now, Prof has indicated to us yesterday, it's no longer just Internet of Things, it's Internet of everything. So that includes people and things. So he will touch on it when he presents later. So as with other services, here we also have got opportunity strengths, which are fintech innovations that are not prevalent. We are seeing that some of the fintech innovations are not yet prevalent in Namibia. The P2P lending, for example, crowdfunding that we find in other countries, that is not yet prevalent in Namibia. But Bank of Namibia has, with its fintech regulatory framework, I believe that we are going to address some of these challenges that might be there between the fintech and the reg. So on the other side, on weaknesses and challenges, fintech costs are relatively high. For some people in rural areas, they have to travel the distances for them to be able to access sometimes some of these services. And also on financial technology, it becomes a bit costly if your infrastructure is much more costly. So then, of course, the e-money services closed loop that I have just briefly touched on earlier. So this is now my second last topic, is on the regulatory and policy environment. So talking of where we are in the digital space, but now the regulations. What are these regulations doing? The Communications Act 2009, which was amended in 2020, has enabled CRAN to regulate telecommunication services, networks, broadcasting, postal services, allocation of radio spectrum. That is now on the telecommunication space, and I will come to the bills that are now currently still underway. Then we have got the Bank of Namibia, obviously having the object as promoting monetary stability, dealing with all monetary policy issues, money supply, currency issues, reserves. So under that, and then also to contribute towards financial stability. So in terms of the Bank of Namibia Act number 1 of 2020, it had got additional responsibility of macroprudential oversight on the whole financial system. So that is where we are fitting in, and sometimes you might be wondering, why are they coming up with topics such as those, as Governor have earlier indicated. So then we have got also the Banking Institutions Act number 2, which is to provide merchant accounts, and this is particularly, I will touch on how these laws are then linked to what we are discussing here. And the non-banking side, we have got Ncrst, which is supervising capital markets, insurance, pension funds, micro-lending, and the medical aid funds as well. So now, this year, Act number 2, the Financial Institutions and Market Act, which is now harmonizing and consolidating the laws and providing the other incidental matters that might not have been covered. So then we have got the Ncrst Act, which is under which the Ncrst was established. It is to improve the coordination, monitoring, and supervising human capacity development and dedicated funding. So earlier on, I spoke about the Ncrst Act. Currently now is the Electronic Transactions and Cybercrime Bill, and it started with the Electronic Transactions Act 4 of 2019, which took quite a bit before it was actually promulgated and then implemented. So we are hoping that that process of getting to the cybersecurity bill is going to take much faster, so that we are able to also provide that safety in terms and protection towards for cybersecurity. One of the other policy aspects which the president this year has really dedicated to was to establish an 8-member task force, the 4th Industrial Revolution Task Force, which is tasked to conduct a country assessment to determine our country's readiness for 4IR and drafting a national digital strategy. It is important to have a national digital strategy for us if we want to go on this digital transformation journey. Here, what are the pitfalls? Firstly, starting with the opportunities and strength, it's to be proactive in terms of the regulations. So that regulations, as I have mentioned all of them here, should not be an impediment to innovation, but at the same time, striking that balancing act between regulation and technology. And then also to be able to mitigate risk before they actually happen. Then on the weaknesses and challenges that we have is having regulated versus unregulated entities. We have limited scientific and human capacity, so the upskilling and reskilling that is important, and limited private sector participation in research and development. That is very important, and I think it's through initiatives such as the Innovation Hub, we hope that that is going to increase going forward. So in conclusion, where are we with digital transformation as a country? Just a snapshot of what I earlier discussed. In one slide, digital infrastructure, broadband coverage has increased, but there's still scope for improvement. Electricity supply, which through the initiatives that we have seen with Green Hydrogen Council's initiative that has happened, we are hoping that some of this will be addressed through that. ICT infrastructure, which needs to increase in the rural areas. Then on the digital platforms, there are various mobile apps and e-commerce platforms, all the applications. We have software-enabled platforms. However, manual applications are still prevalent. We still prefer to print out instead of, having everything digital and signing. We're still afraid of signing electronically, so we still print them out and sign documents and then scan them through. Higher learning, in terms of skills, then the higher learning digital skills offering is increasing, but basic education still has a long way to go. So that is where we as a country need to, and I hope the policymakers will take note of that. Digital financial services, we have more cashless services. We could never imagine a couple of years ago that without withdrawing cash or without having a card, you can actually pay without even being there physically. The products are being delivered to us. And then the digital distributed ledger technology, Internet of Things, AI, and biometric technology. So there we are really making some progress. Then we come to the critical one in terms of what do we recommend, having looked at the overview. And this is not the recommendations from the whole symposium. Recommendations of the whole symposium, we are still going to look at it. But based on the assessment that we did on the progress, We are saying that our country needs to expedite the digital platforms according. Thirdly, we need to increase scientific and technological, human and institutional capacity. Fourthly, we need to access to affordable financial services, which is very critical for poverty reduction and economic growth. And then the regulatory reforms we've been talking about, let's expedite that as a country, because that could be impediments towards what we want in the financial innovation. Let's promote infrastructure sharing. Why should everybody put up their own towers and everybody put up their own infrastructures, physical or virtually? Why can we not share that information and then just avoid the multiple initiatives and redundancies in terms of the deployment of the infrastructure? And then there is a need to accelerate data sharing and driving business growth. With that, I hope that we have given you some food for thought, and we are looking for more lively interactions during the panel discussions. Director of Ceremonies, I thank you.